episode of As the Leader Grows. Dude, I have got a crazy guest for you guys today. This is going to be insane. I literally was like, we started talking and we've been talking for probably 5 or 10 minutes off air. David Packhouse, part of a mastermind that I'm in Vegas with some really good friends of mine like Sean Kelly and some other guys. This is the guy who was the inspiration for the movie War Dogs. And now he's into everything. But dude, David, what's up, dude?
Hey, Tim.
Welcome. Thank you for being here, my friend.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hey, tell everybody a little bit because everybody starts talking about the movie. I'm asking you questions off air. I'm like,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
did you get to like go to the set and like
hmm
meet Miles Teller and Jonah Hill and all the guys?
Yeah.
Walk us through like that. You were sharing with me a little
hmm
bit off air about being able to
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
cameo in the movie.
Right, right. So I have for the sharp-eyed viewers, they may recognize me from the movie. In about 5 minutes into the movie, there's a scene where Miles Teller is playing me, is trying to sell these bed sheets and towels to a nursing home owner, and there's a guy there entertaining the old folks there with his playing guitar singing, and that guy is played by me. So I'm the musician in the background there. And the song they have me playing to a group full of 90-year-olds is Don't Fear the Reaper.
That's hilarious,
Yeah,
dude.
so they thought it was funny. I wanted to play one of my original songs because I write music and
Yeah.
I've published my own
Did
music,
somebody
but
ask you for more cowbell while you were playing it?
oh, you can never have enough cowbell. Uh so yeah, but they told me, this is the song you're playing because that's the joke. So
I love it,
yeah.
dude. That's awesome. Well, dude, talk to me about. I mean, I saw the movie War Dogs came out in 2016. We talked about that a little bit off
hmm
air.
hmm
How in the world did you ever get into that vertical? Like,
Right.
how did that happen?
Yeah, and definitely not something I expected, that's for sure. At the time, I was 22, 23 years old when I first got into it. And I was actually working as a massage therapist. That part of the movie is true. I was working as a massage therapist, and I also had a few side businesses. I was selling SD cards on eBay. I was also buying and selling bed sheets and towels.
That's great.
Though I had a little bit more success in real life than they show in the movie. They wanted it to make it a better dramatic arc, so they wanted me to be completely broke and desperate. In real life, my businesses were doing okay, not like amazing, but they were doing pretty well considering I was 22 years old. And then I bumped into, I was going to college as well. This was all like,
Mhm.
a way to support myself while I was studying chemistry at university. And I bumped into an old friend of mine that I'd known since we were kids, a guy named Ephraim Diveroli, who in the movie is played by Jonah Hill.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he told me that he was currently doing government contracting, selling stuff to the government, mostly guns and ammunition, because he was a gun nut. He loved that stuff. He learned it from his uncle, how to sell to the government, how to bid on contracts and win the contracts and deliver to the government. And so he started his own company. He'd been working on his own for about a year. And then we bumped into each other. And he asked me, what I was doing these days. And I told him about, the SD card business, about my bed sheet business. And he says to me, a lot of the stuff you're doing is very similar to the stuff I'm doing, finding suppliers overseas, arranging logistics, taking care of financing, etc. And he's like, but I bet I'm making way more money than you. So maybe you should come and work with me because I could use a partner. I've been looking for a partner. I know you're a smart guy, reliable. We've known each other forever. So I asked him, well, how much money have you made? And he goes to me, he's like, okay, I'm going to tell you, but only to inspire you. I'm not saying this to brag. And he opens up his laptop, he logs into his bank account, and he shows me he has $1.8 million in cash sitting in his bank
Mm.
account. And he was 18 years old at the time, and he'd been working for 1 year. So
Wow.
I was like, holy crap, this guy knows this business
That's a
really
few bed
well.
sheets, isn't it,
Yeah,
David?
yeah. You made a little bit more money than I was
That's
making.
a few
So,
bed sheets
yeah,
and
yeah.
SD cards.
Yeah. I was doing all right, but I wasn't making millions.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I told him, well, you obviously know what you're doing, so I'm in, teach me
So,
what
dude,
you
walk me through
what you
that
know.
transition.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
that's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so we started working. He was working out of his apartment, just like I was. We
Yeah.
didn't have an office or anything like that. And he showed me how to go on well, these days the website is called sam.gov, so you can check it out, sam.gov. And you can search for whatever item that the government, that you want to sell to the government, and it shows all the so the way it works for the people who don't know about government contracting, the way it works is the government, when they want to buy something, they're required to put it out for open competition, so that in theory, the
Hmm.
taxpayer gets the best possible deal,
Yeah.
right? It's always in theory, but it's better than outright corrupt systems
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Russia or whatever.
Hmm.
So the way it works is the government posts on their website, these days it's sam.gov, what they want to buy, what the requirements are. And then anyone who's qualified to bid on it can submit an offer. So there's different qualifications depending on what the item is. For anything above 250 grand, for example, you have to have past performance, they call it, which is proof that you've done this kind of business in the past. Otherwise, you can't win the contract. So, as a brand new bidder, you'd have to go for smaller contracts, and then you build up your past performance and
250.
then go for the bigger ones. So he'd already been working for about a year. So he had a pretty decent amount of past performance, particularly in the small arms segment. And so at first, I was going to expand the business by getting us into new industry. So I just started working on fuel contracts. And my first contract that I won was for 80,000 gallons of propane. And it was delivered to an Air Force base in Wyoming. My end of the deal, I made about 8 grand. We were splitting the profits 50-50, and that was
Hmm.
about like 2 weeks of work. So pretty good start. Um, and then I started working on some other contracts. Eventually, he got me to work on some of his weapons contracts. I knew nothing about weapons. I was not a gun guy. I was a
Yeah.
musician, more of a hippie than anything.
Yeah.
Playing guitar. Working as a massage therapist. So I knew nothing about guns. Never owned a gun. But he wanted me to work on some of his contracts that he was already working on. So I started learning about it. And then after about 8, 9 months, we saw this massive, massive contract, and like 20, 25 times bigger than anything he'd ever
Mm.
won. And that was the contract that we got infamous for in the movie, the Afghan contract, they call
Hmm.
it, which was eventually it was worth about $300 million, and it
Wow.
was to arm the entire army of Afghanistan and police. And we beat the big defense contractors like General Dynamics and ATK Systems. These are multi-billion-dollar
Hmm.
publicly traded companies, and we beat them, just us two guys working in his living room, to this 300
So
million
tell
dollar
me,
contract. Yeah.
walk me because
Mm,
this is fascinating.
mm.
Like this is to me this is more fascinating than they did a
Mm.
movie about you. I mean, the movie, although it with all of the and I remember
Mm.
parts in the movie, those things, but just how in the world do you just go to the website,
Mhm.
you find okay, you need natural gas or propane,
Mhm.
then you basically broker the deal.
Exactly
That
right.
right?
Yes,
Yeah, I was a
correct.
mortgage broker for about 10 years.
Right.
So back in the 2000s when
Mhm.
it was like printing money back in the day.
Right.
So you basically find this. So now you've got to go in
Mhm.
and you're gonna outfit the entire army of Afghanistan with small
Mm.
arms and
Right.
rifles and all the weapons.
Right. Well, this particular contract was just for the munitions. It was just
Okay,
the
gotcha.
stuff that the weapons use, not the weapons themselves.
So
Yeah.
you go
Yeah.
into and you
Yeah.
find different people to give you bids
Correct.
on
Yes.
the munitions, and then you
Right.
go in, put the bid together, and
Exactly. And these particular munitions were Warsaw Pact caliber munitions. So
mhm.
there's, for people who don't know, there's two major calibers, two major weapon systems in the world. There's Warsaw Pact, which is the former Soviet Union and its satellite countries, as well. And then there's NATO, which is the West,
Mhm.
the United States, its allies. So NATO uses the M16, for example, and the Warsaw Pact countries use the AK-47,
47. Yeah.
and the ammunition are not compatible between the two guns. So The Afghani National Army, they were trained on the Soviet weapons because they were fighting the Soviets in
Mhm.
the 80s. And so that's how they got most of their weapons, from like taking over the Soviet weapons back in the 80s. And so when the United States wanted to arm them, they realized they needed to give them Warsaw Pact munitions, which the United States doesn't manufacture much of. So they needed to have brokers like us go and to the former Soviet Union countries like Eastern Europe, etc., to find sources of supply for these munitions in order to arm the Afghanis. And the advantage of that, of using Warsaw Pact munitions, a nice bonus was that it's way, way cheaper
Then
than
US.
the NATO munitions.
So
So
you, so
yeah.
you, so you had to go over there, secure a
Mhm.
relationship, submit the bid, and then
Mhm.
see if you win.
Correct. I mean, we'd already had a whole bunch of relationships because this
Hmm.
wasn't the
Hmm.
first contract we won. We wouldn't have qualified to bid on the
Right.
contract because they require a large amount of past performance
Hmm.
for something this big. So we'd been winning, I should say, Ephraim had been winning contracts for about a year and a half of delivering munitions of this type to
Hmm.
Iraq in much smaller quantities. So he had already all the past performance needed for this contract and a lot of the connections. But for something this big, we needed pretty much all the connections to have a chance of winning. And that's why he brought me into the contract. He's like, don't worry about the fuel stuff. I need your help with this because this is the
Yeah.
biggest thing we've ever worked on. I've got these 5 rock solid connections who could, quote me maybe 40% of the contract. I need you to find pretty much every other potential supplier in the world and get the rest 60% of the contract quoted and competitively. And so we have a chance to win this. So that's what I did. I pretty much scoured the internet, all the trade directories. I got references from people who weren't able to help me, et cetera, et cetera. I went to a whole bunch of trade shows, exhibitions to meet people in person,
Hmm.
and eventually built up quite a network, and we were able to bid it very competitively,
Well,
enough
I
to
tell you
win.
what, when you hear
Yeah,
your network is your net worth,
yeah, absolutely.
wow, that's really
Yeah,
true. If you got, so you win this
yeah,
contract,
yeah.
dude, tell me what that was like.
So it was, I mean, it was shocking, definitely, because we weren't really expecting to win. We thought we knew that we technically qualified to win because we
Uh,
had all the past performance, we had all the technical qualifications to bid on it, so we weren't automatically disqualified. But we didn't actually think we were gonna win because we knew we were bidding on against the biggest companies in the industry, and they
yeah,
had decades of experience and hundreds of people on staff and billions of dollars in capital, and we were just 2 schmucks in an office, and it
that's
wasn't even
awesome,
an
man.
office in our living room. So we didn't really think we were going to win, but we felt like we had to like at least roll the dice and give it a shot. So we were pretty floored when we actually won the contract, and it turned out we won it probably because we were just so much more competitive than anyone else. So they're not legally allowed to tell you what
Yeah.
the next bid is because that would give you an incentive to raise your price on the next time you're bidding on these things if you're very competitive. But while I was talking to one of the contracting officers, the official from the government who managed the contract, um, he told me, he's like, yeah, you guys were just so incredibly competitive, we want to see you guys succeed. And I'm like, well, how competitive were we? And he's like, he's told me this over the phone, and he's like, I'm not really allowed to tell you this, but since it's just us two talking, you guys beat the next nearest competition by over $52 million. In
Wow.
that's how much lower. And so that we beat the next competition by a lot. And so that's why they awarded us the contract,
So
because we
it
were
was a
just so
$300 million
competitive.
contract.
Yeah, yeah.
How much did you make?
So we bid it at 9% profit margin,
Uh,
but after we won the contract, we renegotiated with our suppliers, and we got it to an average of about a 20% profit margin.
that's not
So
bad.
yeah,
60
so
million bucks.
yeah, $60 million in profit. Yeah. Now we
From
didn't end up,
selling
yeah,
bed sheets
yeah,
to $60
yeah,
million profit in
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
2 years for you?
So it would have been $60 million if we had completed the entire
Right.
contract.
Right.
Unfortunately for us, we didn't, and the whole thing kind of blew up and became a big political scandal, and that's why we have the movie War Dogs, because
Gotcha.
it
Gotcha.
got
Gotcha.
into the media. At the end of the day, we before they canceled our contract, we delivered about a little under $70 million worth of it.
Yeah.
So
Still
we
nice.
made,
14 million
yeah,
bucks is not a
yeah,
bad payday.
yeah.
That's
Not bad at all.
crazy,
Yeah,
dude. That's it
yeah,
beats the hell out of some bed sheets, don't it, David?
yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
then,
Yeah,
so you're doing this. Tell me like the travel, and was there any
yeah,
point like you felt like, damn, I may get killed over this? Like
yeah.
this, we're in some.
Yeah, so we did do a lot of traveling. I went to a lot of exhibitions, trade shows, defense trade shows, which are pretty cool. You get to
Mhm.
see all the major defense and smaller defense contractors, manufacturers in the world all display their wares. So you get to
Mhm.
see all the cool new weapon systems and military equipment, vehicles, tanks, helicopters, all that stuff. It's all in
Mhm.
these on the trade show floor, which is incredible. Um, I visited, quite a few different countries to, inspect supplies and things like that. Um, uh, but the time that I actually felt, funnily enough, the only time I actually felt like I was in physical danger was not from any of our suppliers or anyone like that. It was actually from my business partner, Ephraim, who when the contract started getting delivering on a regular basis, he told me that he just didn't feel like I deserved the money that we had agreed that he would pay me.
Wow.
And so he decided he didn't want to pay me a penny. And I told him to go fuck himself, of course.
I bet you did.
And I told him I'd see him in court. And so I quit. And then I realized while we were kind of like I was getting ready to sue him, that he owed me quite a few $1 million, and it might be cheaper for him to just hire someone to knock me off. And so I figured, if I mean, I didn't know if he was like, if he had that in him. Yeah, in
Wow.
retrospect, I don't think he did. Like, I don't think he's that kind of guy. Like, he's willing to screw people out of money, but I don't think he's willing to take the risks to actually,
Right.
have someone killed. But at the time, I wasn't sure. So that was actually when I bought my first handgun that I actually owned personally.
So
Was
was
at
this
that
part of the
time.
movie?
They didn't show that part. No, they kind of like end it really. They end it like really shortly after he
Yeah.
tells me he's going to screw me over, and then we kind of get arrested, and that's kind of where the movie ends. Of course, that's not where life ended.
Right.
But so yeah, I mean, after I quit working for him, I bought myself a handgun just in case he decided to
Yeah.
do something crazy. I got ready to sue him, and then the feds raided his office because they found out about because we were repackaging the ammunition from Albania. We Most of the AK-47 ammo that we were buying
Mhm.
in Albania had originally come from China. And we didn't know this until we went over there to inspect it and saw the Chinese markings on the boxes. And we realized that this violated the terms of our contract, because our contract said that no Chinese ammunition
Mhm.
could be
Mhm.
delivered, because there's an arms embargo against China
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
was put in place by the United States in 1989 after the Tiananmen Square massacre. But the ammo that we were buying from Albania was delivered to Albania in the 70s, which is before the arms embargo. So it
Mhm.
legally didn't violate the arms embargo. But the US Army wrote in our commercial contract with them that we couldn't deliver any Chinese munitions in reference to the embargo, but they didn't actually write it, the reference to the embargo in the contract. So as far as our contract was written, we just couldn't deliver any Chinese ammo, regardless of the embargo, of whether it violated the
Yeah.
embargo or not. So at the time, we were thinking, well, maybe we should tell the army and get permission. And in retrospect, they probably would have given us permission. But we weren't sure. We thought they might cancel our contract, and we
Mhm.
didn't want to risk losing a $300 million contract.
Yeah.
So we hired an Albanian guy to repackage the ammunition to get rid of all the Chinese markings so that the army wouldn't know.
Right.
Turned out later we found out that they knew the whole time and they didn't care, and they really didn't care. They only cared when it got out into the newspapers.
Right.
And the way it got out into the newspapers is because Ephraim, my former partner, decided to switch repackaging providers. So he fired the original,
Pissed the guy off.
yeah, and he
And
pissed
the
the
guy
guy
went and
off.
told.
Exactly, because he owed the guy 20 grand and decided to screw him out of the 20 grand. That guy got really pissed at that and told the New York Times about it, told the FBI, and that's how the whole thing came crumbling down.
Wow. So
Yeah.
did that happen before you and Ephraim kind of had your falling out?
It happened right after. Well, so the falling out with the box guy happened before Ephraim. So Ephraim decided to screw over the box guy before he decided to screw me over.
So when you saw him screw the box
yeah.
guy over for 20 grand, you
Yeah.
knew the handwriting's on the wall.
Yeah. Well, I told him, I'm like, look, you should pay this guy. I told him, and he's like, nah, he's not going to do anything. I'm like, you don't know that. He knows everything. And he's like, nah, he's not going to do anything. Screw that guy. And I'm like, I told him that's a really bad idea. And he's like, don't worry about it. I've been doing business, he's not going to do anything. I know this kind of guy, and he's not going to do anything.
And how old was Ephraim at the time?
Ephraim was 21 at the time.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
If you had somebody like me in your corner, I would have done that for probably $250 a year, and I'd have saved you millions.
Yeah, absolutely.
20 grand. At 21 years old, it's amazing how arrogance you can get when you're making that much money.
Absolutely.
And you
absolutely.
You think you've got everything figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would have paid the guy myself, but unfortunately he wasn't paying me any of the money either. Yeah. So I wasn't able to.
So whatever happened between the two of you guys?
So after he had informed me he didn't want to pay me what we had agreed upon, I quit. Obviously, I was getting ready to sue him. And then the feds raided his office like a month later. And I realized, and then my lawyer told me, you can't take any money from him because then it'll look like he's paying you off to keep you quiet. So our whole, lawsuit went into deep freeze while the whole legal issues got worked out. And that took about 3 years for them to work out the legal issues. Eventually, we both pled guilty. They had rock solid evidence against us. There was no denying it. We had, unfortunately, we wrote everything very incriminating in email. So there were very detailed emails about how to repackage the Chinese ammo and all that.
Yeah.
And so there was no denying it. But we both pled guilty. I got sentenced to 7 months of house arrest, which was an enormous blessing, just a slap on the wrist. I wasn't really the target because the government knew that I had not made any money from this, and he was kind of the ringleader of the whole thing. Yeah. And he probably would have gotten a relatively light sentence because he also pled guilty, but he violated his plea agreement by committing a second crime before getting sentenced for the first one. So they kind of threw the book at him.
Boy, he just doesn't have a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. He just, they told him to get out of once he pled guilty, they told him to get out of the arms business, and he just couldn't get out. He kept on doing the business under someone else's name, eventually got entrapped into a sting operation by the ATF. And the ATF an undercover agent tricked him into picking up a handgun, which he was, at the time, he had already pled guilty. So he was technically a convicted felon. And that's a felon in possession of a firearm. You can get up to 10 years in prison for that. So he could have gotten 15 years total, 5 for the fraud charge and 10 for the gun charge. But he negotiated real hard, got great lawyers, and negotiated it down to 4 years. He ended up doing 4 years in prison.
And then you guys, how long has it been since you've spoken?
So after all that happened, I sued him, and we ended up settling for something much, much smaller than what he owed me, just because I wanted him out of my life. Yeah. So the last time I saw him was during a deposition for that lawsuit, which was maybe 6-7 years ago.
So what happened with the movie? When did the movie come about?
So the way the movie happened was because the box guy told the New York Times about our repackaging operation. The New York Times did this whole large investigation and published this front page article about us, which was very unflattering and had a whole bunch of misinformation in there.
I bet it did.
Yeah. and so that became a big political scandal. And New York, I'm sorry, the Rolling Stone saw the New York Times article and they thought it was an amazing story. So they sent a journalist to interview me and Ephraim and a few of the other people involved. And so they published a very long article about it, which was much more accurate than the New York Times article because they actually interviewed the people involved. And so that story, the Rolling Stone story, came out in 2011, which was after all our legal issues were resolved. And that got the attention of Todd Phillips, who is the director of the Hangover movies. At the time, he was in 2011, he was finishing up shooting Hangover 2. And then he decided to shoot Hangover 3. And then he decided to make War Dogs. So he filmed War Dogs in 2015, and it came out in theaters in 2016.
So you didn't, through the whole movie process, you didn't speak with your former partner at all, with Ephraim at all?
No, so he was actually in prison at the time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, while they were making the movie, he was in prison. And so they didn't so they bought my life rights, they call it, right? The rights to my life story, which they didn't have to do legally because of freedom of speech, freedom of the press in the United States. Anyone who's a public figure, which means if your name appears in like a newspaper or TV or anything like that, anyone can make a movie about you using your real name, say anything they want about you, and you can't sue them. And they don't have to pay you a penny for it either. So they didn't actually have to buy my life rights, but they wanted the movie to be a bit more realistic. And so they bought my life rights so I would collaborate with them. But Ephraim,
so they came to you and sat down with you and said, we want to do a movie about this story.
Yeah. Well, they originally...
This is crazy, dude. This is insane.
Yeah.
Like, what were you thinking when these guys are like, we want to do a movie?
Yeah. They originally went to the Rolling Stone writer. They kind of based the movie off his article. And so because I was collaborating with the Rolling Stone writer, to give him the inside scoop to write that article, so he recommended that they buy my life rights too. Yeah. I was pretty, I would never expected in a million years that there would be a Hollywood movie made about me, let alone
and then you're
about
in it.
Arms.
Then you're in the movie. How did that happen?
Yeah. They just asked me. They're like, hey, we want you to do a cameo, and we want you to play guitar and play "Don't Fear the Reaper." And I'm like, can I play like one of my own songs? They're like, no, you're playing this song, or we're gonna get someone else to do the scene.
You're like, okay.
So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll play your song.
Dude, how cool was that? To me, I mean, you went from selling bed sheets to generating millions of dollars in revenue.
Yeah.
Getting screwed by one of your best friends. He
Yep.
goes to prison. Your house arrest.
Yeah.
Now we want to do a movie, and we want you to be in it.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
That's insane, dude. Like like there's people going to listen to this podcast and be like, these guys are full of shit. There's no way this happened.
Yeah. Well, they could read my Wikipedia article if they
I'm looking at it right now. I literally have it pulled up right here.
That's so funny.
Yours, and I have Ephraim's pulled up now right next to yours.
Yeah.
That's crazy,
That's so
dude.
funny. Yeah.
So you do the movie and you're doing this. So what was next after
that? While I was actually under house arrest, I had the idea for my first invention, which is actually the product that's on the poster behind me for people who are watching this on video. It's called the Beat Buddy, like your buddy that plays the beat. And I'm a musician. I've been playing guitar since I was like 15. And while I was under house arrest, of course, none of my drummer friends are going to come over with their drum set. It's a massive pain in the butt to move a drum set. So I bought a drum machine, which is like an electronic device, goes on the table. You can make beats with it, play along with it. But every time you want the beat to change, you have to stop playing your guitar, press a button on the drum machine, go back to playing your guitar.
It's like a foot pedal for a guitar player.
Exactly. So
beats goes in your ear like a metronome, or
well,
like
a lot
Ableton
more fun than a
like
metronome, but yes, exactly. So you can control the beat hands free with your foot, so you can like trigger drum fills, do transition fills, do accent hits, pause, unpause, that kind of thing. Like all the live things that a drummer would do in a live situation, you could do hands free with the Beat Buddy while you're playing your guitar. And so that was my first invention that helped me launch my company, Singular Sound, which we've come out with 7 other music related products since then, all in the same kind of ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And but I've always been looking for something. So that got me into the whole inventing space, which was
Mm-hmm.
super cool to create new products that have never existed before. But my brother, who I built the company with, I learned my lesson to only work with people I absolutely trust.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I built this company with one of my brothers. And who's been amazing. And but he's not a musician. He's very talented in other ways, but he's not a musician. And he always complained to me that the music industry is super small, not that many musicians out there. So we were always trying to like brainstorm products that anyone can use, not just musicians. And so that's how we came up with our next invention, which was our first non-music related invention called InstaFloss, which is a product that flosses all your teeth for you in
Where did
10
that idea? Y'all
seconds.
just sitting around the barbecue
So
with the family, and you're like, let's create this instant thing
so
where you can floss your
yeah.
teeth in 10
So the
seconds.
way so the way that came about was we were hanging out at my place. We were eating mango, and
Okay. So
mangoes
stuck in your teeth. Terrible.
exactly. We
Yeah, it's
got
terrible.
the mango's delicious, but it gets those fibers stuck in your
Yep.
teeth. And
Yep.
so my brother asked me for some dental floss. We both go to my bathroom. We're both flossing our teeth in the mirror, and I tell him, I'm like, man, I'm complaining. Like flossing your teeth is such a pain in the ass. If there was a machine that can floss your teeth for you, everyone would buy that. And he looks at me, he's like, everyone would buy that. Everyone hates to floss. Everyone needs to floss. So we just start
100%.
spitballing ideas. Eventually we landed on the design that the InstaFloss is now, and people can check it out on instafloss.com, like
Yeah,
Instagram, but
we'll
flossing.
tag that, put that in
Yeah,
the show
yeah.
notes for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
instafloss.com. And we just delivered. We've been working on it for quite a few years at this point, and we just hit the market a couple months ago. So the first 4,000 customers have gotten the unit, and we've gotten amazing feedback from it. And we're currently working on expanding production. We're doing a fundraise round of to help expand production as well as develop the next iteration of the product. So if anyone is invested in the
Yeah,
dental
you
healthcare
and I can
space,
definitely,
yeah,
we can definitely chat about that off air.
yeah,
I've got a lot of,
yeah,
I got 2 or 3 guys with PE firms
perfect.
that are in my mastermind that would probably be interested. Dude, this story's
Yeah,
fascinating, bro.
thank you.
How old are
Yeah,
you now?
I'm 42.
Man, it's
Yeah,
been
yeah.
20 years
It has
since,
been since I started in the arms business. It's been
yeah,
18 years.
that's
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah,
man.
Creya, time flies. Time flies.
Do you
Yeah.
do, so now
Yeah. Yeah.
you've also got a course, you teach people
Yes.
how to do the government contract stuff.
Correct. Yeah. So ever since the movie came out, a lot of people have been contacting me on social media, asking me to teach them how to do government contracting, how to sell to the government. And I'd been out of the business for 15 years. I was banned from doing
Mhm.
government contracting. That was part of my sentence. I just last year, actually 2022, my ban expired. But I hadn't been in the business for like, a decade and a half. So I didn't really feel comfortable teaching people how to do it
Mhm.
because I didn't know how up to date my info was. But then these 2 guys contacted me out of the blue, and they told me, like when we were 21 years old, like 6 years ago, we saw war dogs. We were dead broke working on a farm, picking bananas of all things. And we were dead broke, and the farm had a movie night, for all the farm workers. And we saw war dogs, and we thought to ourselves, man, these guys are our age, like if they can do it when they're 21, 22 years old, why can't we do it? And they threw themselves into it, and they took them like a year or 2 to like really learn the business. But nowadays, 5, 6 years later, they have a multi-million-dollar government contracting business, and they're flying all over the world. They didn't end up specializing in arms. They ended up specializing in laundry services of all things.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, because the government buys everything, literally everything. They
Yeah.
run whole bases and
Yeah.
organizations, and
Yeah.
so they literally buy every product and service that exists.
Yeah.
And so they specialize in laundry services, and now they have multi-million-dollar laundry contracts that they're doing
Yeah.
for US bases all over Europe and in the United States. And so I thought to myself, man, these guys are currently doing government contracting. They're as up to date as they can get. And so I pitched to them. I'm like, hey, why don't we start, like, I have a lot of people asking me to teach them how to do this stuff. You guys are super up to date. I've got this cool story, so people know about it through War Dogs. Why don't we start something together where we could teach people how to do government contracting? They love the idea. And we launched War Dogs Academy just a month ago, and it's been going really, really well. And one thing people always ask me, when they hear about War Dogs Academy, they're like, if this is such a profitable business, why are you teaching other people how to do it? Like, why don't you just grab all the money yourself? And what people don't understand is that the federal government puts out 30,000 contracts every single day.
Oh, wow.
30,000. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like physically impossible to even look at all of them, let alone work on them.
Right.
There's more than enough for everybody. And most people end up specializing in various niches. Like I specialized in small arms and fuel, when I was doing it. And my partner specialized in laundry services, but there's people who specialize in food and clothing and in transportation services. There's literally everything. So there's more than enough business to go around. And it's been going really well. WarDogsAcademy.com is where people can find it.
Dude. So last question, how cool was it to have a movie made about your experience in your life and then to be on set with Jonah Hill and Miles Teller?
Yeah.
I mean, how crazy was that?
It was pretty cool. I got to say, it was very, very surreal. So I attended, they invited me to the premiere, in the famous Chinese theater in Hollywood. Yeah. And so I was there, with Bradley Cooper, who's also in the movie, and Miles Teller and Jonah Hill and all these like famous Hollywood people, and, sitting in the theater. And then Miles Teller comes on screen and there's in the beginning of the movie, he's like, my name is David Packhouse and I'm an international arms dealer, and I'm like, this is the fucking most surreal thing ever. I can't believe this is happening. This is like a dream.
Did you stand up in the movie theater like, that's me? Oh, that's hilarious, dude.
There's one part of the movie where Jonah Hill, is when they start recruiting other people, to work in the company. Jonah Hill says, "Fact, 6 months ago, David was jerking off guys for money, and nowadays he drives a Porsche." And then Miles Teller goes, "That's not a fact." And Jonah Hill goes, "That's a fact." And so I stood up in the theater and I go, "Not a fact."
That's hilarious, dude. That is the greatest.
And the whole theater cracked up laughing.
That's awesome, dude. David, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I would say Instagram is my most active social media platform. I'm also on X/Twitter. But yeah, that's I would say that's where I'm most active is Instagram.
David Packhouse.
David Pack at David Packhouse on all social platforms.
Let me spell that for you. It's DAVID. Packhouse is PACKOUZ. So
Correct.
Check him out. You can go to my Instagram. You look him up. You can look him up there. Dude, thanks for joining us today. Dude,
my pleasure.
Unbelievable story.
Thank you.
Final words for our audience today.
Never give up. You never know how crazy life can get. And, no matter how bad it gets, there could always be something amazing further ahead. So keep going.
Love it. David, thank you for joining us. Guys, thank you for joining us. And again, man, listen, you've helped us get in the top 1.5% of all podcasts around the country. And the only reason we do that is because you take episodes like this and share them with your friends. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week on As the Leader Grows.